Well, NFL player Damar Hamlin is in critical condition after suffering cardiac arrest in the middle of a game.
Yeah, this was stunning for everyone who witnessed this and was there on the field. The Buffalo Bills safety collapsed on the field during the first quarter of the game against Cincinnati. He fell to the ground after tackling Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins. The Bills say Hamlin's heartbeat was restored on the field before he was rushed to the hospital. The NFL suspended that game.
Well, fans gathered outside of the hospital where Hamlin is being treated, lighting candles and praying.
CBS News chief medical correspondent Dr. Jon LaPook is here with us in Studio 57. You're not treating Mr. Hamlin, you're not his healthcare professional, but based on what we know, you can help walk us through what was horrific for the millions of people who watched and for him, to experience this. But just from your experience, what happened? Because it seemed like it was a pretty typical hit.
That's what it looked so normal until he collapsed.
May have been a hit just at the exact wrong moment. What is your assessment?
Well, again, we don't have all the facts here yet, but you're hearing the term commotio cordis. You've been seeing it in the press and written about it, and it's Latin for agitation of the heart. And what can happen, it rarely happens, usually in young people, in athletes, is a blow to the heart at exactly the wrong time during the heart, between heartbeats, sends it from its normal rhythm. Remember, the heart normally goes beat, beat, nice, and blood goes up to the brain, and it sends it into an irregular heartbeat called ventricular fibrillation, where the heart is beating like a bag of worms, and the blood just stops being pumped upstream to the head. So you're going to faint very quickly with that, and you saw he popped up, and then within about 3 seconds or so, he went down. So that is something that we see with an irregular heartbeat. Now, the very good news, from my point of view, if you're going to have, again, we're assuming it's ventricular fibrillation. Sure. We're not sure. It could be something else, maybe at a congenital condition. Although he's an athlete, world-class athlete, usually the NFL does all these tests beforehand. So let's assume that he did have an irregular heartbeat. The great thing is that he was seen within seconds by personnel. They started CPR, which allowed blood to go to the parts of his body, especially the brain, even though his heart itself wasn't pumping. And then, great news to me, as an internist who has seen plenty of people with cardiac arrest, and the people who survive get shocked very early, and that rhythm restored. So he had a pulse on the field, the Buffalo Bills press office said. Right. So that's very good, because what these AEDs do, automated external defibrillators, is you put the leads on the person's heart, and then you hit a button, and it does the rest. It has a computer chip in it. It analyzes the rhythm, and if it's something that's shockable, ventricular fibrillation or ventricular tachycardia, then it will say, get away, hit this button, and it delivers a shock. It will not shock you if you're in a normal rhythm. You just fainted. So people are worried, oh my God, what if I do harm? You're not gonna do harm. And in this case, we'll find out. I really wanna know, did he get a shock? We haven't been able to figure that out yet, but if he did, that potentially was life-saving, because he got intubated, he got a breathing tube put in. And
we understand that he is currently on a ventilator. What does that tell you?
And that would be...
people are concerned about that.
It would be to be expected, okay? He would be put into sort of a medically induced sleep so that he can not be agitated. They're going to put a breathing tube in to get a lot of oxygen to his body. And the first 24, 48 hours are very important, because you want to see, was there damage to the various organs throughout the body, the kidneys, the liver, the head especially. But if he was revived quickly and he had a pulse quickly...
What does quickly mean?
Well, it sounds like within minutes he was able to have a pulse. We know that he had a pulse on the field, and he was taken off the field. I guess he had CPR for, I've heard, like 8 or 9 minutes or something like that. And we're trying to look back at the footage and see exactly how long. But the bottom line, you see these statistics about what percentage survival goes down with every minute of delay. It's very hard to really know about those statistics. What's important is that he had good CPR done, which you have to assume that they're professionals, and he had a defibrillator placed, which may have given him a shock, and that would give him the best odds. So, I'm actually cautiously optimistic. There's no knowing. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in this setting. But if they really did restore a rhythm, that if he had a pulse, he had a blood pressure. If he had a blood pressure, blood can go to his organs. So
good to know there are at least some positive signs from your perspective.
And I think the bottom line here, for the lesson for everybody, because this is so rare, is sudden cardiac arrest, sudden cardiac death occurs about 350,000 times a year. And for about half of those people, they had no idea they had heart disease.
Wow.
And this is why you're seeing this movement. And I've been involved with it, by the way, for 25 years. I was back in 1996. One of my closest friends, Tony Cox, just dropped at the Reebok Club in New York City, and they did not have a defibrillator back then. I was
and that's
part
why
of
we
this
see
movement
these
to do this.
defibrillators
That's
now
why you're seeing these
everywhere.
defibrillators, and I think everybody out there, if there's a message from this, go get a CPR course, including for kids, pediatric CPR, and make sure there's an AED around if you're in public places and gyms and
and don't be afraid to use it.
Don't be afraid to use it.
All right.
Dr. Jon LaPook, thank you very much. We know everyone rooting for Damar Hamlin today.
Absolutely. And we continue our coverage in Buffalo now with CBS News national correspondent David Begnaud. David, you've talked to some people in the community today. Let's go ahead and hear from a mental health professional who lives in the area that you spoke with.
You've had the November one, and now we had the second one that was horrible. So people are trying to recover from that. But then we have this event when everybody was so hopeful and starting the new year right, and then this happens.
And that's part of it, that we have heard so much bad news coming out of Buffalo. What are you hearing about how this setback is affecting the community? And you also heard Dr. LaPook just now say that he's cautiously optimistic. How are the fans and the people of Buffalo responding?
Look, consider this. The Buffalo Bills mean a whole lot to this area that's suffered and dealt with a lot over the last 365 days. They just had a pretty traumatic winter storm that was deadly, that they're still coming out of. There's snow on the ground as I look off camera right now from that storm. Within the last year, there was a massacre, a mass shooting at a grocery store. You might remember that happened here in the Buffalo area. The Bills are playing pretty well right now, and so there's a lot of excitement around them. As I got to the airport and checked in and got a rental car yesterday, the lady who checked me in was wearing a jersey, and she had her phone set to the side, and she said, I was watching the game as I was checking people in. So you can't really underscore enough how much a team like this means to an area like this that needs a little bit of love and a little bit of a feel-good feeling. That's how it's impacting the community, whether you're talking to the mental health expert like the lady you just heard from, or Bills fans just walking up and down the street or rolling down the window to give us a thumbs up. There's something interesting that happened to broaden this, you guys, that I saw last night. As I was going through the Twitter feed, I saw politicians on the right, politicians on the left, celebrities on different sides, sports athletes, regular folks, teachers, and they were all singularly saying the game doesn't matter, his health and safety does. And how often do we see something in this country unite everyone in the way it did last night?
It's such a good point, David. And even during the game last night, there were messages from people saying, look, NFL, call off the game. There's no question. The players, the fans are okay with making sure this young man is healthy rather than, competing for what is, as we know, is a game. And to your point, there were some Bills fans who, in fact, placed some flowers outside the Cincinnati Medical Center where he's being treated. The outpouring of love and support is tangible also through Hamlin's charity, the Chasing M's.
Lovely to see.
Only had, I think, about a $250,000 goal, but because of this incident and the intention, I understand donations are flooding in by the millions. David, what can you tell us about that side of this reaction?
Well, so I love this. He had a charity, Chasing M's charity, which benefited the area in Pennsylvania where he grew up. He had a goal of roughly $2,500. Do you know how much there is now? In excess, I'm told, of $3 million. Again, you couldn't write a script, I believe. In this world, you couldn't write a script that brings about the best of humanity, like what happened last night when everybody watched on this football field. And listen, I did have a moment where in 20 years of journalism, I thought, gosh, I wish I could take people to other tragedies, because if this elicits this, if people were able to see more, what could happen in this world? Folks don't often see the horror of watching CPR and an AED used. I have to tell you, I used to teach people how to do CPR, and I used to certify people in how to use an AED, an automated external defibrillator. And I heard from a cardiologist at Vanderbilt in Tennessee about an hour ago, and she said, David, AEDs are back in the news, and we couldn't be more grateful.
Right.
If there is something of public service that comes out of what happened last night, it would be go get yourself trained in CPR, learn how to use an AED, because it will save someone's life. And we hope that that is the final outcome for Mr. Hamlin.
Absolutely. We are all thinking about Hamlin and the Buffalo community. And also, I think that's such a great point, David, that all of us need to know how to and feel empowered to step in when we need to help. David Begnaud, thank you.
Thanks, David.